Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Roof It Up. Today, typically, if you're listening, you might be in the roofing world, which you are. If you're listening to this, maybe you're not, but you are still listening to this. We typically have roofing contractors on here and so much more. But today, super excited because we have the one and only Mr. Cale Delaney. Now, this is a cool one because I actually personally know Cale, and he is truly he's super fit, which is awesome. And number two, he has a fantastic business. So Cale is into short-term investment rental properties and such and so much more. But he has a background in engineering and then got fully vested and fully into this world of short-term rentals. So as you're listening to this might be something that you're interested in. Hey, I want to maybe into Airbnb or things of that nature. Well, Cale is the man to learn more about. So Cale, so happy to have you on the show. Thank you for taking time to be here with us. If you can introduce yourself more to the listeners, that would be fantastic. So take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thais. And cool to be on your show. It's funny.
Thanks.
I remember when we had first met at Emma's Asado. You were telling me about your business and the podcast and all that stuff, and that was before I had my podcast, and I was just getting started and a lot of this stuff. And now here we are. Look at that.
Here we are. Life does so many wonders. I love it. Love it. Okay, Cale, tell the audience who you are. I know you brag about yourself. That's what I want you to do right now.
Okay. I'll give the brief background. So, like you mentioned, I had gone to school for engineering, done at University of Miami down here in Florida. And, during the school, I had quickly realized that I did not want to do that as a profession. And I don't really know what I wanted to do, frankly. At that point, being young and dumb, I wanted to make money and get out of college. And so I had started working for a commercial real estate brokerage firm down in Miami selling multifamily buildings. And I always say it was a great experience, just terrible timing. It was 2006 to 2008. And so, you couldn't pick a worse time to be selling real estate.
I'm going to agree with you on that one, for sure.
So as that was drying up in 2008, I jumped ship and not wanting to get into the engineering specifically. I just kind of went with the next logical thing, which was construction management. That was somewhat related to my degree. And so I worked in that industry for almost 15 years, ultimately as a senior project manager doing, commercial restoration projects across the country and even a little bit overseas. And it was something I'd lost a passion for. It was very demanding, very stressful job, but good on paper. I mean, it was good pay, great benefits, especially after COVID, a lot of relative flexibility. I was working from home. But it was around that time with COVID and when, my youngest, Ramses, when he was born, that I really started just having the mindset shift of wanting to find or really feeling a need to find something else and really just not being able to see myself continuing along in that career for the next 30, 40 years, whatever it was going to be to one day hopefully be able to retire. Right. And so I just started going down the rabbit hole and I fell back on real estate, just in general real estate because of that brief bit of experience that I had many, many years ago. And again, just kind of whether it's true or not, but I think there is a good element of truth to it that, a lot of people, a lot of wealthy people are invested in real estate. So it sounded like a good thing to start taking a look at. Right. And
absolutely. No, yeah. I'm absolutely. We hear that often, right? Real estate is one of the main platforms that we're hearing multimillionaires and billionaires. That's part of their portfolio. So makes total sense. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I just started going down the rabbit hole, reading books, listening to podcasts. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that book. Great book. And that really kind of gave me a little bit of clarity on the vision of or maybe confirmation that I was heading in the right direction. That, if I wanted to get out of that corporate world, that 9 to 5, or just working for somebody else, then I needed to have a business and be investing. And so that book kind of solidified and confirmed that portion. And so from there, I just started just going all into real estate, just all different types of assets. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really didn't even know anything about short-term rentals at that point. I actually started out in small multifamily. I thought that was going to be the ticket. I thought that's what was going to get me where I wanted to be. And I'd set up a goal, a 5-year goal, which at that point I thought was very aggressive, for basically replacing my income and being able to leave the job, right? That was kind of my ultimate motivation. Replace the income within 5 years and leave the job.
And did you do it?
Spoiler alert, yes, I did.
There you go.
Not with small multifamily. I quickly realized that was going to take a lot of properties and probably more than the 5 years to get me to where I wanted to be financially. And so, the first building I purchased was a small multifamily, locally in South Florida, which we still have. It's a great property, actually. But after that first one, and realizing that it wasn't really going to get me where I wanted to be, I went into shiny object syndrome, looking at all different types of real estate, and then happened to come across short-term rentals on a podcast, and the market that I invest in. And then I didn't know where it was. I looked it up on Google Maps, which it's the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And literally 3 days later, we packed up the minivan and drove 17 hours out there and checked out the market. And within, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks, we were under contract on the first one. And then from there, it kind of moved really fast. And I guess long story short is that instead of that 5-year goal, it was really within about 9 months or so that I replaced the income. And I still stayed on with the job for 2 years. But eventually, I left that job and now I'm full-time in the short-term rental world.
Love it. Talk about fast speed. Talk about cheetah quickness. That is totally what you did. You just did a cheetah on us. You went super fast. Love it. Okay. And I love something else that you hit on is you own properties not in the state that you live in, right? So you live in South Florida, which is where I've met you. And you now a lot of it Smoky Mountains. So just kind of saying how you can actually have this really successful, short-term property rentals in different places around the world, even in different states. So love it. Okay. So I have a question. One of the things that describes you is that you say you're the accidental intentional millionaire. Accidental and intentional typically don't go hand in hand. So can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Expand some.
Yeah. I say accidental because, again, I was, just like 95% of people out there, in that I thought the only way to live your life was that you go to school, you get a job, you invest in your 401k and IRA, and hope to retire at 65 or 70, right? And squeak out a living for the rest of your life. I mean, that's the mindset that I was in. I had drunk the Kool-Aid. I didn't think there was another way. But, the intentional part came when, like I said, I had that mindset shift a little bit, and started thinking not as what society teaches us anymore, but as what I see the real potential is out there in the entrepreneurial world. And so once I got into that intentional mindset, then things really took off, right? So, but if you had asked me, I guess 3 years ago or so now, when I first started, or 4 years when I first started down this path, if you had asked me at that point if I ever thought, number one, that I'd, have my own business, or that I'd be investing in real estate, or, be a millionaire, or any of that stuff, I mean, no way. I mean, I was, I was far from that, and had no intentions or desires or anything of that. So yeah, I feel that I've lived kind of that dichotomy of a life, and I never really thought I would get to this point until it happened, right?
Yeah, no, it sounds like a dream, but also it's this mix of never thought of it. If we asked you 4 years ago, hey, this is going to be you're like, heck no, you probably would have choked on your coffee or something, right? And this is you today. This is you. So I love it. So I know that you did not get to this. Obviously, you heard a podcast, it triggered something. And there's so much intentionality, right? There's so much hard work that goes into this. Some people think it's just like, you just, snap a finger, but it's not. There's so much intentionality that goes behind it. But can you share some key strategies that have helped you scale your business to its current level? What are some key strategies that have helped you get to where you are? Like, how many, from what I'm listening, you have multiple properties. What's helped you get to where you are now? Or what?
Sure.
Yeah. What's helped you scale?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is that, number one, you just got to be financially responsible from the beginning, right? And that's throughout my life, I've been, pretty frugal, maybe to a fault at some points. Ask my wife, and I'm sure she'll tell you that. But I mean, the benefit to that, though, is that, while working that 15 years in that career, I mean, I was able to at least, save some money, and I had some money in retirement accounts and that type of stuff. And I had purchased a home several years ago, so I had some equity there. So the first step is just, being financially responsible and get yourself a firm foundation with that. And, from there, that's going to give you a lot of options for when you actually are ready to start pulling the trigger and get started. I'd mentioned that even though I had replaced the income within 9 months or so of getting started with the short-term rentals, I still stayed on with the job for about 2 years. And, that's a big help, because during that time I was able to let the profits from those initial properties, just pile up and be able to ultimately use those to purchase the next, right? Because I was still living off the income from my job and even saving, still saving money from that job to put towards investments as well. Plus it helps your financeability, of course, to have a W-2 in the beginning and all that stuff. So, if you have a job and it's not like killing you, then, it's probably worth sticking on for a little bit, at least until you can get a few properties under your belt. Because once you get those first few, or, depending on the deals and the size and all that stuff, but typically once you get the first few, you kind of get that snowball effect that starts to take place a little bit, meaning that, those first properties are going to start buying your next one, right? And then when you get that next property, it's going to make getting the next one that much more quicker, right? And
like a snowball.
Exactly, right?
Nice.
So the momentum grows faster and faster as you grow your portfolio. So, the first one is always going to be the hardest, maybe the first couple. But then after that, again, that snowball effect starts to take place and help you be able to scale. The other part really is just you got to have the intentionality, be willing to take the risk and take the action. I mean, I did it faster than a lot of people do. I don't necessarily recommend people do it as fast as I did. It's not easy. It takes a lot of risk. It takes a lot of stress. It takes a lot of work. So, if you have a longer term goal or mindset, then, it may be better to take a little bit of a slower pace, but, it just takes a lot of intentionality and willing to take action, because a lot of people, they go through all the right steps and right actions, but they get stuck in what, is commonly called the analysis paralysis stage, where you're gotten to the point that you're analyzing deals like crazy, but you never pull the trigger on even submitting an offer, right?
Right.
And so that's where a lot of people get stuck. That's where 90% of the people get stuck, and they never move beyond that.
Okay. So like, it's the snowball effect, right? That's super huge help. And then also you just mentioned something like on your W-2, like doing that job that's helping you. So,
Right.
It's giving you that kind of steadiness as you're starting something new. And then you're able to gain in more traction and gain more properties. Okay. So now let's say today, right now you have multiple properties. I'm assuming you are really not assuming, actually, I know this. You are very, very highly rated on Airbnb and a lot of platforms. And that, again, is not accidental. It's very intentional. And it's all about processes, right? Like making sure that things are going smoothly, clients are happy. How have you accomplished that? How have you accomplished now that you've gotten to this place where, yes, you've scaled, now you have a business, now you no longer are working that W-2 job. However, now you run your own business, you have multiple properties, but you do it with success. success and excellence. How do you do that? Like what were some very strategic things that you've done and put in place to help you there?
Sure. Yeah, thankfully, the beauty of technology today, just like in the roofing industry, I'm sure, but in the short-term rental world, the same thing. Like the technology and the software that's out there is pretty good. And right off the bat, I like to say you can automate roughly 90% of the business through the different softwares. And there's a couple key ones. First one is called a PMS, or a property management software. And that's going to be kind of your central hub. It's going to link whatever platforms you're on, like Airbnb or VRBO, or any other different platform. It's going to link them together, kind of show you your calendar and bookings all in one place, a unified inbox, and just give you a lot of functions that you can just do from that central hub instead of in the individual platforms. And then you're going to have a dynamic pricing tool, which is another piece of software that's going to basically scrape data and analyze supply and demand and competitor properties. And then within the parameters that you set, it's going to update your pricing on a daily basis, like for every single day throughout the year. So that's going to help you optimize your pricing, your revenue, and your occupancy on your property. So with just those two pieces of software, like I said, you can pretty much automate 90% of it, because again, you're automating your pricing more or less. And then with that PMS, the key thing is that you set up automatic messaging. So you're going to set up automated messages for pretty much everything you can think of, right? All the general stuff, bookings, directions, confirmations, all that stuff. But then any property specific things that they might need to know, or any, troubleshooting things, maybe common issues perhaps that a property has. You can put those in an automated message so that all that stuff just goes out without you blinking an eye, right? And then the only thing that you're having to do is to, when a guest perhaps has a question that's not already been answered, or, if there is an issue that comes up that you have to address, that's when you're going to step in manually. But the rest of that stuff you're going to set up and automate. And the other key thing really is that, especially in today's market, you have to, if you want to be successful in the short-term rental industry, you have to treat it and run it professionally. I think the days of it kind of being a hobby or a side hustle are a little bit going to the wayside. A lot of people, just like myself, got in during COVID, and the short-term rental world has really exploded since then. It's become very, very popular. A lot of people got in, and during COVID, it was very easy. I mean, just being frank, you could literally probably purchase anything and like be the worst host ever and still make money. Now it doesn't quite work that way. You actually have to put in work. And so a lot of people are not willing to do that. And so, you may hear, there's a lot of, the media always blows things out of proportion, but there's a lot of rumors and stuff out there about the so-called like Airbnb bust, saying that, the short-term rental industry is, going down the hole. It's over. But
you do hear a lot of that. Like you definitely hear that is, so it's, I will confess, I've heard that a million times already, that hotels are the thing. And you do kind of sometimes see it where people are like, no, I'd rather go to a hotel, right? Because it's going to be easier. Such like they're not charging me for every single thing and all this other stuff. So yeah, I've heard it all. Yeah, and you're right.
I mean, there is some truth to that, but the people who are struggling the most are the people who are not treating it and running it as a business. They're the ones who are doing it as a side hustle, and or they purchased improperly. They paid way too much, which a lot of people did that. A lot of people are still doing that. So I always say, if you buy it right and you manage it right, you're going to be successful in it. But you have to be willing to put in the work and be conservative and do your due diligence.
I feel like you could totally make a t-shirt of that. You buy it right, manage it right, you're going to be successful. I feel like you totally can do a whole label on that, because it sounds, it sounds good, because it's the formula, right? Yeah. Buy right, manage it well, it's going to be a success, because that's the formula there. Okay. It's very cool. So so you just kind of told us some secrets here. Like you can have multiple properties, kind of run it already 90% ran by automation. What about the other 10%? What would that entail?
Yeah. So that's going to be where, like I said, where somebody, a guest reaches out because there's a question that they have, or there's an issue that you have to deal with, or there's maintenance that you need to coordinate with, something breaks, or that type of thing, and that stuff does happen. I mean, think about it. A rental car. I mean, when you have a rental car, are you as careful with it as you are with your own car? Probably not.
No, absolutely not. No.
So they do get used and abused. They do get more, typically a bit more wear and tear than a primary home. But at the same time, they get a lot more attention too, right? I mean, we have maintenance teams that do monthly inspections of the properties, and our cleaners are going in there, sometimes multiple times a week, so they have eyes on it in case there's something that they see. So you are going to have a lot more maintenance and things that break that you're going to need to be replacing. But that's all part of your maintenance budget that you're going to set up, hopefully, when you underwrite the property. And of course, the revenue potential for properties as a short-term rental is significantly higher as a long-term rental. So you're going to be not only offsetting those additional expenses, but ideally making significantly more profit than you would as a typical long-term rental.
Yeah. So question there. So let's say you're in Florida, which you are, and then your properties are over in the Smoky Mountains. So finding a team, right? Finding people that are going to go, people that are solid, that you can really confide in, that are going to do a good job cleaning, or that are going to do a good job maintenance. Is that hired out to another company, or how does that work? How do you find those right people to be a part of your team?
Yeah, that honestly is probably one of the hardest parts of the of the business. They say good help is hard to find, right? That's any industry. So, yeah, I mean, those are your key, quote unquote, boots on the ground, your maintenance team and your cleaners. And chances are the people that you start with are not going to be the people you stick with. It's especially in a market like the Smoky Mountains, which is, it's the top vacation rental market in the US, and it has been for decades. I mean, it's a pure vacation rental market. So the good thing about that is the infrastructure is there, meaning everybody knows how to handle short-term rentals. Like, there's more cleaners and more maintenance people than you can shake your fist at. The problem is that there's more cleaners and more handymen than you can shake your fist at. So the quality is not really there. So you really got to try your best to find a good team, and that's where it's critical to get connected with the local investor community. And again, today's age with technology, I mean, Facebook is huge. So getting into investor groups for the Smoky Mountains and getting referrals, right? That's going to be your best method to try to find a good team. And, you may find a great team, but then they start to taper off. I mean, that's kind of a common thing too, is that because there's so much business out there, that a lot of these smaller groups, where they're giving a lot of individual attention, they start getting more and more business. So they start hiring on people, and then the quality starts to go downhill, right? So that's a common trend, especially with the cleaners and the maintenance out there. So it is tough. It is hard to find good quality cleaners and maintenance staff. But when you do, you want to hold on to them, because they're really the lifeblood to the business.
Yeah, taking good care of them. Seems like, based on your reviews, seems like you've done a good job there. Literally, I see your reviews. I'm like, way to go, Cale. Very nice. All right, Cale. So we're coming to the end of our podcast. And if there is like something that you would say in life, right? Obviously, there's been several moments, I'm sure, in life, something that just really triggered you, or like in a positive way. I know in the beginning of the podcast said mindset shift, like you had to shift a lot of mindset there. But what is something that you would love to leave to listeners? Like, listen, if you are dealing with this, and this holding you back, like, take the leap, or something like that. Or what is something that in your life has really impacted how you look at life now? So yeah, if you want to leave some of that, that'd be fantastic.
I will. I'll give you maybe a twofer here, because this first one I think it's probably important for your audience, because one of the great things about short-term rentals is that it provides, especially for business owners or high income earning individuals, whether it's with a corporate job or 1099 or whatever, it has significant tax advantages that only short-term rentals offer as a real estate asset. And that is that you can take the depreciation from the property and get a significant chunk of that to use the first year. And so as an example is, let's just say you bought a $500,000 property. Typically, as a short-term rental, that property would be depreciated over 39 years, meaning that you would take that value of that property, divide it by 39, and for the IRS, for tax purposes, as a paper loss, meaning it's not an actual loss, but the IRS allows that portion of what they call depreciation. You could take that 1/39th each year for 39 years, and it would offset, the corresponding amount of your income up to about $25,000 is the limit for the IRS. However, with short-term rentals, you can take what they call bonus depreciation. So you do this study, you hire somebody to do it. It's called a cost segregation. It basically breaks the building into its different components and lifespans. The end result is that typically you can take about 20% of the value of that property as depreciation in the first year. And so if you bought a $500,000 property, 20%, that's about $100,000 of depreciation. And with short-term rentals, with relatively minimal, easy qualifications, you can qualify to be able to take that full amount of depreciation, that $100,000 or a portion of, and offset your other active income. So let's just say if you made $100,000 from your job, and now you have this chunk of $100,000 depreciation, technically you made zero for the IRS, and you owe zero taxes, right? So it's the only real estate asset that allows you to do that with these minimal qualifications. To do it with any other type of real estate, it's almost impossible if you have a job because of the qualifications the IRS requires. But with short-term rentals, they don't. So it's a huge, huge, huge thing. So that's something that might be of interest to your.
Definitely a hack. Nice hack there. That's very good to know. No, very good.
But to more directly answer your question, there's several things. I had mentioned kind of triggering of the mindset shift was, the birth of my youngest son. So that was definitely something that had a really big impact at the time and still has a significant impact, and really kind of pushed me over the hill to make this journey and make the effort to get to where I am now. But, what really, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess what really motivates me more in terms of how I look at things now is my faith. And, I didn't really talk about it throughout this podcast here, but throughout my journey, that's been a big part of it. And, in that purchasing of that first property, I was featured in a book as well called Hospitable Hosts. And I kind of tell my story in detail there. But, throughout that process, prayer played a big part throughout getting started and getting that first property and really moving forward. And so that really helps model what I do now. And, with our properties and our business, we do, and we advertise this, that in our listings that we do our tithe from that. So we contribute, 10% of our proceeds from the short-term rental business to some various charities. So we put that out there for our guests and our clients to know.
Love it.
And, so that I think plays the biggest part. And, the real formula for success, I mentioned the buy right and manage right, but the real formula for success that I tell people is, first, you got to pray. Second, you got to pick your property or pick your path. Pick your path, meaning, whether it's going to be a type of real estate or, a different business or whatever that is. And then you got to persevere, right? Because it's, especially in the beginning, you're going to run into challenges. You're going to want to throw in the towel. So you got to have a real strong conviction as to why you're going to keep going, right? And then once you get over that, you get into the fourth P, which is going to be prosper, right? So pray, pick your path, persevere, and prosper.
That also could be a shirt, and I totally think you need to print it. I love it. Cale, so powerful because it's not just simply about, money, and it's not just simply about, having all this freedom, but it's the impact that it has in lives. And like, I love how you're sharing about your faith, right? And from what we see, that you're a follower of Jesus Christ, right? You're a Christian, and you're very bold about it too throughout your journey, and you also share it throughout your social platforms, which is awesome. And I love how you are reminding, like, even if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't believe in prayer, well, give it a try. Talk to God. Very, very cool. Cale, we are so thankful to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for taking time. If you can share with this, the listeners, your handles, like your social handles, where they could reach you if they want to have you on their podcast, or if they want to learn. I know you have your own podcast, listen to your podcast. If they want to follow you on social like I do and all these great things, where can they find you? How can they search for you? And after you share it, if you're listening, as you're listening, all this information is going to be below, either on Spotify, YouTube, all those iTunes. It's going to be right below. So you can just simply click and go directly to Cale's handles. All right, Cale, let us know. Where could they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Facebook's usually the easiest. So you can just look me up, Cale Delaney. It's Cale with a C, C-A-L-E. Delaney, you can find me there. Instagram, it's just at Cale_Delaney. And then for our podcast, it's called The Fit Investor. How to be fit financially, physically, and faithfully. So Christian-based entrepreneurial podcasts. You can find that on any of the major podcast platforms. So Apple, Spotify, Google, all those things.
Love it. Cale, thank you so much for being on the show. We are so thankful for you. And it was great having you. And we will see you next time. All right, everybody. And see you later. Bye.
Welcome to Roof It Up. This is a podcast about innovators, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and their stories about the course they took by Saenz Global.